And when it came time to sign, these guys did something you and I might not have done. If we'd written the Constitution, we would have put "we the undersigned." But they took care of it on day one, page one, line one, because they wrote "we the people" in order to form a more perfect union. And when they signed not only for the 3 million Americans who were alive at the time, but they made it abundantly clear they were signing for their posterity. And if you look around this room, you will see what that posterity looks like. Because before we were born, before our parents or their parents or their parents were born, our names, their names were on that document. And the names of every man and woman yet to be born in America's limitless future are there. Because the Constitution is a sacred contract signed in the past that is valid at this moment, that is taking us into the future. So they made handwritten copies and they sent it out and they waited. And people liked it. Ordinary men and women had been told that they had dignity, and not that that dignity had been given them by those men in Philadelphia. They were simply informed in writing that they had had it all along. But the more they read it in church halls, at home at night by lantern light, around a pot-bellied stove at the country store, they found flaws. You see, too much liberty, undefined, is too much freedom. They asked themselves questions. If there's another war, can the Army house troops in my home as it did this time without my permission? Can I keep my guns? If I don't like the president 20 years from now, can I stand on the street corner and tell everybody? Will I be arrested for doing that? If I'm arrested, will they immediately tell me why? Will I have a lawyer? Will there be a jury trial? Will I have to testify against myself? And more importantly, will any governmental official ever tell me how to pray? One of the great unsung heroes of the Revolution, George Mason, put it more succinctly. He said, because the Constitution was flexible, amendable, then let's fix it. Let's define America's freedoms, but let's not do it behind closed doors, as was the case in Philadelphia. Let's do it out in the open. But you cannot amend a Constitution until it's ratified. So one by one, the states said yes, but they each put a little Post-it note on their ballot saying this is fine, but fix it. One state wanted 6 amendments. One state suggested 30. So back it went, but it was ratified. And the new government got underway. Now, as huge as the federal government is today, it's hard to believe that on that very first day, all 3 branches of the federal government met on 2 floors of one little building in New York City. But when you start a new government, you have a lot on your mind. So the idea of amending the Constitution was put on the back burner for 3 years. Finally, somebody suggested they heed the call of George Mason, and on the floor of the House, in open debate, 10 amendments were crafted. And if you're not sure the spirit of Philadelphia was with those men in New York, read the 10th Amendment. Any power not used by the federal government nor assigned for use by the states remains the property of the people. So they made handwritten copies and sent it out, and they waited. And people really liked it, and one by one the states signed. Ironically, the last state to sign to make it official was the state of George Mason, of George Washington, of Thomas Jefferson. And on the afternoon of December 15th, 1791, nearly 13 years after those first shots were fired at Lexington and Concord, with the signature of Virginia, the Bill of Rights became law, and America's codified freedoms, as we know them, were born. Now, I like to think something special was with those men in Philadelphia and New York. Call it the hand of God, fate, providence, whatever, because what they crafted was so new, so different, so revolutionary, and it has been so copied. And if you're still not sure this is a blessed land, listen to some of the coincidences surrounding the Founding Fathers. You may know some of these. On the 50th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, John Adams lay dying. His entire last thought centered around what was going to happen to the country in the future. And as he died, his last words were, "At least Thomas Jefferson survives." But what he had no way of knowing in the days before the telephone and CNN is that 90 minutes before, Thomas Jefferson had died, almost at the exact 50th anniversary moment of when his document, the Declaration of Independence, had been first announced. On the 55th anniversary of the Declaration, our 5th president, James Monroe, died. And as the 60th anniversary was approaching, little James Madison became gravely ill. Now, I don't say little derisively. At 5'3", he was the shortest man to ever occupy the White House. But he was in his time a giant. He said that there should be a separation between church and state, that every American child should have the right to a good education, and that slavery should be abolished. And he said in his last public address that freedom to survive had to be cherished and nurtured. No, his family didn't want him to die, but in a way they wanted him to live until the 4th of July, but that didn't happen. On June 28, 1836, James Madison died. A courier rushed the word to the White House, and the man in the Oval Office took it as if he had been hit by a ton of bricks. Old Hickory, Andy Jackson, went to his room and shook. You see, until that moment, if Jackson had had any question about the Constitution, about the right to bear arms, the extent of the freedom of speech, he could have called in James Madison and said, what was this thing that you and those other young guys put together? But with the death of James Madison, you see, the last founding father died. The last link to the past was gone. And Jackson must have thought that to that moment the ship of state had always sailed within sight of land, but now he must take it into uncharted waters. But Old Hickory had a chart. We still have that chart. And if we could reach behind the protective glass at the National Archives and retrieve the Constitution, we could hold in our hands America's freedoms and her future, not because of the might of an army, not because of the personality of a potentate or the will of a dictator, but because of simple English words, lovingly written in now fading ink on now crumbling parchment. And that is what people don't understand. You know, those terrorists did some terrible things, but at least they didn't take down the Statue of Liberty. And as long as that woman is in the harbor holding that lamp, the welcome mat is out and the vacancy lamp is on. No, my friends, America is not like an elevator that once you get in, you want the doors to close. And if you don't understand that, you haven't read what's on the Statue of Liberty. Now, most people can quote, "Give me you're tired, you're poor." That's the third verse. You see, the French gave us that statue. It's 151 feet tall. Takes one heck of a pedestal to support a 151-foot tall statue. The pedestal was paid for by American school children who sent in pennies, nickels, and dimes. After the statue was put up, they needed more money, and a little woman named Emma Lazarus saw the Statue of Liberty, and it reminded her of another statue in another place at another time, holding another torch for another reason, to keep people out. And that was the Colossus of Rhodes. And she wrote a poem and donated it to help the cause, and she called it the New Colossus. The words are electric. Let me close by quoting most of that poem. Listen carefully. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land, here at our sea-washed sunset gate shall stand a mighty woman with a torch whose flame is the imprisoned lightning. Her name is Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand flows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp, she cries with silent lips. Give me. You're tired, you're poor, you're huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Could it be that people really don't understand us? Or maybe they're just jealous. God bless America, and thank you very much.